All right. Welcome back, folks. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. I'm here on Bleacher Report Live to talk about the Rams, and they're coming off a huge win, their third straight of the season. We're going to get into it, but the question is, are they the biggest underdog threat in the NFC? Before we do, just letting you guys know, if at any point you want to follow me, you can follow me on all social media at JK Bogan, including the Bleacher Report app at JK Bogan. So let's dive into it. We got of course, the New York Times. How can the Los Angeles Rams make the playoffs, or can they? They're at 50% right now, following the Packers win last night to the Chiefs. Had the Packers lost, that would have gone up to as high as 58% likelihood of making the playoffs. But right now, the question remains: can the Rams be a threat in the NFC? I believe they can. I'm going to explain. So first off, you look at the offense, okay? All across the board, the last 3 weeks, the offense has only given up one sack on Matthew Stafford. Only one. Back-to-back weeks, they did not give up a sack of Matthew Stafford. And something that is very key and critical is being able to protect your quarterback, obviously. That is something that they've done well. Now, in addition to that, another thing that's really important, another thing that's huge, is being able to run the football. When you're able to run the football, you're not only able to keep the defense honest and let them know, hey, you could do different things. But when you're able to run the football, you're also able to set up play action. You're also able to slow down a pass rush. And I think that's been really key here for the Rams, at this juncture in the season. So being able to protect Stafford, which they've done the last 3 weeks, they've been able to run the football consistently with Kyren Williams, who's been one of the best running backs in football since he's returned. Then you look at the receivers and you talk about, okay, well, Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford were the best wide receiver quarterback duo in 2021. Well, where has that gone? It doesn't really matter at the moment, because the Rams are finding no matter what, they're finding ways to win games regardless of how the receivers do. So just a lot of credit to them. Puka Nacua having a incredible rookie season. He's the only 1,000-yard receiver to 1,000-yard rookie receiver in Rams history. And that's what, obviously makes them dangerous. You got Tutu Atwell, who's generated 4 defensive pass interference, over 100 yards this year. He has set the Rams up. It'd be nice for him to get those yards, but they've been tackling him before the ball gets there. I mean, that's really just what it comes down to. No one really wants to play the ball when they see number 5 deep down the field. They'd rather just tackle him, knock him off course, and just figure it out. So the Rams can be the biggest threat in the NFC to a 49ers, to an Eagles, to a Detroit Lions. I would not want to play the Rams if I was any of those teams come late January. So here's what we're at right now. Before we even get into how big of a threat can they be, let's talk about really quickly, how can they make the playoffs? Well, if the Rams do win this game this weekend against the Ravens, that puts their playoff percentage up to 73% likelihood. If they beat the Commanders, then that is going to go up to it's up to the 82% range. They beat the Saints on Thursday Night Football, and now you're sitting there at 9-6, and you have a 94% chance of making the playoffs. And you could head on over to MetLife Stadium, and you can basically lock this thing down. You'd be at 10-6. And at this point, the reason why it's not 100% is because the Vikings and the Packers both have the tiebreakers over the Rams. The Packers have the tiebreaker over the Rams because they beat them head-to-head. The Vikings, because they have a better win percentage in conference games than the Rams. So that is very important here to realize. Now, I don't think the Vikings have an easy schedule. I don't think the Raiders game is easy. The Bengals game is easy. They got the Lions twice. They got the Packers. This is not going to be an easy schedule for the Vikings. And I do see them dropping, a few games down the stretch. Now, keep in mind, if the Rams win out, they get in regardless. How likely is it that they win out? Not extremely likely. But if they do win out, they get in regardless, because the Packers and the Vikings have to play each other. So that's something to consider. Now, what happens should the Rams drop this game against the Ravens? Well, their chance to make the playoffs goes down by 6%, but they're not out of it. If they were to win against the Commanders, this goes up a little bit. And then if they're able to beat the Saints on Thursday Night Football, this is up to 66%. You beat the Giants and you're hovering around 76%. And then you beat the 49ers. And for the most part, you're pretty likely going to make the playoffs. If you don't beat the 49ers, then now this is going to be around a 72% chance of making the playoffs. So the Rams really do want to win this game against the Ravens. Keep in mind, and this is important here, this is all based on a formula. This is all based on simulation. This is predicting based on this and simulating 94,000 plus simulations what could happen if these games happen. So you have to keep in mind that this doesn't mean that they have, a guaranteed 72%. Could be lower, could be higher. This is just factoring in the Rams wins and losses. Because let's just go down here for a second. Obviously, this game doesn't affect the Rams. It's an AFC game. So we go down here. Obviously, the bright blue is going to affect the Rams the most. Lighter blue has still effect on the Rams. Notice if the Raiders win this game against the Vikings, this goes up to 58%. Then if the Rams beat the Ravens, this is going to hover around 79% here. Now, if Seattle loses to the 49ers, this goes over 80. Or it'll just stay at 79. And now that if the Packers win this game, it's going to drop. But if the Giants win this game, it is going to go up. So this is all based on this. But realistically speaking, if I wanted to just go through and say, I have the Rams losing this week to the Ravens, right? I have them winning out after that. So if the Rams lose this week to the Ravens, and the Vikings lose to the Raiders, like I think is going to happen, and Seattle loses to the 49ers, the Rams still maintain. They actually go into week 15 right around where they came into it. So this loss, while immediately it's going to sting if they do lose this game, they're not out of it because it's based on other teams here. And I do think the Packers beat the Giants on Monday Night Football, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants won that game. That game's weird. I don't know why. Anyway, 51% would have them better than they are today. Then week 15, we have the Rams and Commanders. They win that game. They go up to 60%. So good stuff there. I think the Bengals could win this game against the Vikings. I really think the Vikings could be in some trouble here. They're on the road back-to-back coming off a bye. I don't like that. So I'm going to say that the Bengals win that game. They're at 66% at that point. This game, I mean, I think the Panthers beat the Falcons, to be honest with you. So that's an interesting one there. And then the Packers and Buccaneers, it'd be nice. The Buccaneers are vying for a playoff spot. I could see them giving the Packers their best game. The Packers are on a roll. I'm going to go with the Packers here. That puts them after week 15. Well, let's see with this game. We'll give the Eagles this one after their brutal loss to the 49ers. I think they bounce back here. So 74% to make the playoffs going into week 16. Then you win Thursday Night Football, and that puts you at 89. And then after that, you have the Titans and Seahawks. I'm going to say the Seahawks win that game. Seahawks right now would be at 7-8, as you can see on the screen. Rams would be at 8-7. Rams have 2 games on Seattle, keep in mind. So if they beat the Giants the week after this one, Seattle's done. They can't step the Rams, and the Packers and Rams are likely going to be the contenders here. Now, I think the Lions win this game against the Vikings, and that would put the Rams at 8-7, and the Vikings lose that game. They have a 91% chance of making the playoffs. Then week 17, you beat the Giants, and 100% clinched, you're in the playoffs. Say the Vikings, say the Lions blow it for the Rams again. Vikings win that game. Now it's around an 79% chance. We'll say the Packers beat the Panthers here. And so then we move on to week 17. The Rams beat the Giants. And you have the Packers and Vikings. This is a game where you would just want the Packers to win. Because if the Packers win this game the way they've been playing, then this clinches it for the Rams. If the Vikings win this game, and it is in Minnesota, then it starts to get a little uncomfortable here. The Rams would need a Lions win, and they're in week 18. If they don't get that win, then the Rams have a win and you're in situation here they have a 30% chance of making the playoffs. But in reality, this is a 50-50. If they beat the 49ers, they're in at 10-7. If they don't, then it's up to chance here, 10%. If the Packers were to lose this to the Bears, they still have a 12% chance or 11% chance of making the playoffs. And then you go back in these games, decide that. So that's where we're at right now, is that, it would have helped a lot if the Chiefs beat the Packers last night, but they didn't. And so this is where you're at. So I think realistically speaking, the Lions would win this game anyway, and the Rams can make the playoffs in 9-8. I think if the Rams at least go 9-8, they're making the playoffs. I don't think the Vikings are very good. I think they had some good moments, but if you look against those teams, the Falcons aren't great, the Saints aren't great. Those are their two big wins since Kirk Cousins got hurt. So without Kirk Cousins, I mean, you're down to Nick Mullins, obviously Josh Dobbs, and a rookie who I really like, in Jaren Hall, but he is a rookie. So that's where we are at with the Rams. I think as long as and right now they're 6-6, basically the magic number is 3. If the Vikings lose, right now they're also 6-6. So if the Vikings lose 3 and the Rams win 3, the Rams are in. I don't see any other scenario where that doesn't happen. Seattle has a tough one here. Seattle can make this interesting if they upset the 49ers. I don't see that happening this week. That would be crazy though if they did. Now all of a sudden this becomes a little interesting. Then the Seattle game against the Eagles becomes something more. And then, you have the games as this goes on against the Steelers and so forth. So, I mean, that's where we are. I mean, that's Seahawks game against the Steelers. Steelers win that, boom, there you go. But if the Seahawks win that, and then the Seahawks beat the Cardinals, then now the Seahawks have more wins than you, and you have a 5% chance to make the playoffs. So a lot of different things that can happen. I'm definitely expecting the Seattle Seahawks to lose a few of these. I haven't beaten the Steelers here, but I mean, it doesn't really matter. I just don't think they're going to get through the 49ers and the Eagles. So we'll see, but I feel like the Rams are in really good shape. And I think it's fair to say, obviously stranger things have happened, but the way the Rams are playing the last 3 games and the fact that they're undefeated since the bye week, the fact that they're 5-0 and they score at least 24, the fact that they're 5-3 with Kyren Williams and 1-3 without him really tells me that this team is starting to find their stride at the right time. They're starting to surge. And that brings us to the point. And first off, before we get into that point, let me just say, I understand stranger things can happen, but I think the Rams safely, I can predict the Rams are going to make the playoffs. And I believe they're going to go 10-7. I think they lose this weekend to the Ravens, and I think they win out. I think the 49ers are going to end up having that first seed locked up, and they're either going to play their starters and the Rams are going to win, or they're not going to play their starters and the Rams are going to win. But I think the Rams are going to win that game. I have a feeling the Rams are going to win that game. I just do. With the Ravens, I mean, they could win that game too. It's not out of the question. I have them losing 24-20 as of right now, but again, stranger things can happen, but I think a 10-7 record is kind of what you should expect. If they go 9-8, that should be good enough to get in the playoffs. In 8-9, you start praying. They probably, let's be honest here though, if they go 8-9, they only win 2 games the rest of the year. Do they really deserve to be in? Not really. And especially against the teams you're talking about. They didn't lose to the Browns. So to lose 3 of the next 5, which would be 8-9 at that point, you would have to figure they have lost to the Niners, the Ravens, and then one of the Saints, the Commanders, and the Giants. That wouldn't be acceptable. So they got to take care of business. That's really what it comes down to. The Rams kind of control their own destiny, because if they win out by virtue of the Vikings and Packers eventually having to play each other, it doesn't matter. No one can stop the Rams from getting in the playoffs if they go undefeated the last 5 games of the year. That would also be an 8 straight win streak. I mean, that would be crazy. But that would also be kind of similar to what the 49ers did a while back. So interesting stuff there. Okay, so let's talk about it. Why is this team the biggest underdog threat in the NFC? Let's talk about it. So looking at the NFC right now, you have the Eagles at 10-2. The 49ers have the tiebreaker, take over that 1 seed. The Eagles do play Dallas. This is a pivotal game because if Dallas does win this weekend in Dallas, then the Eagles fall from 1 to 5 and the Cowboys would assume control or they would not assume control if the 49ers win. So if the 49ers win, then the 49ers would get the 1 seed against Seattle if the Eagles lose to the Cowboys. That's how big last week was. Now, I want to add a little caveat here with the Eagles. The Eagles got roasted. I get that. Like, they absolutely got blown out. But I want to add some context here. The Eagles played 3 games in the last 12 days, I believe it was. The 49ers were coming off a mini 10-day bye week. So keep that in mind. That definitely helped. But I think with the Cowboys here, this game's huge because this could be the team that the Rams are playing. This could really decide who the Rams are playing the first round. If they make the playoffs, I think it's going to be the 7th seed. And I do think they're going to make the playoffs. So I think it's going to be the 7th seed. I think the Packers win last night kind of locked up the 6th seed. We don't realize it, but that's what I think is going to happen. I don't see the Vikings holding on to this at all. I think the Packers will go right here. I do think Dallas is going to beat the Eagles in Dallas. So I think Dallas is going to move up to the 2 seed. I think the 49ers will get the 1 seed here, and then the Eagles are going to go down in the 5. Now, does that hold on to it? That remains to be seen. And then again, do you have the Lions that move into the 2 seed? Can they do that? They can. So this is where we're at right now for the Rams. Okay. I think the Rams are extremely dangerous. I think the Packers are dangerous. I don't like Seattle at all, but I thought they played really well in Dallas, to be fair. The Buccaneers are a little interesting here because they are 5-7. And while the Falcons did hold off the Jets and they're at 6-6, the Saints fell and the Buccaneers have the tiebreaker over the Saints. So we could see some interesting play between these teams. And keep in mind, the Buccaneers, if they were to win 5 straight, that's 10-7. That would put them in this mix. So they're not far out, but it's not going to be easy for these teams. So the Giants, I would assume they're out at this point. They can only have a best record of 9-8. The Bears can only have 9-8. The Commanders can only have 8-9. And the Cardinals would have to have a miracle happen for them to make it at 7-10. So that's where we're at, right? That's basically where we're at right now. Why are the Rams so dangerous? Well, what makes them so dangerous? Again, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, they're protecting Matthew Stafford. This is a team that's been able to win without with Puka Nacua, without Puka Nacua, with Cooper Kupp, without Cooper Kupp. Kyron Williams has brought a new element to the offense that we haven't seen since Todd Gurley. He has unlocked the offense. The offense is blocking really well. They're the best in the league at running to the right end in gap scheme. So that's something to keep in mind. The defense is playing well. It's 4 straight games where they've held teams under 21 points. That includes the Packers, who we saw last night. That includes the Seattle Seahawks, who we saw on Thursday Night Football put up 35 and lose against a great defense. That includes the Cardinals, who beat the Steelers 24-10 in Pittsburgh, and that includes the Browns. So it's something to keep in mind here. The defense is starting to hit their stride. The offense is starting to hit their stride. They're starting to really move up the rung. So how do the Rams match up with these teams? We already saw the Rams and Seahawks. The Rams have their number. That's that. They're not really going to play any of these teams if they make the playoffs, so we're not really going to talk about them. So let's talk about the top teams. How can the Rams be the biggest underdog threat? Well, in reality, this is a team that spent $75 million this year on players that aren't on the roster. They're paying Jalen Ramsey. They're paying Bobby Wagner. They're paying Leonard Floyd. None of those guys reside on the Rams roster. So because of that, because they decided to pay off all the credit card debt and they didn't have a lot of savings, if you know what I mean, because of that, they were not able to go out and get high priority free agents. However, they did bargain bin hunt and they found some great talents. You look at Akella Witherspoon, he's been balling out as the number 1 corner. They traded for Kevin Dotson right before the season, took him 3 weeks to get acclimated. Then you see him in the Colts game and immediately the run game is working like a charm. And then Demarcus Robinson, They added Demarcus Robinson. We haven't seen him really take off until recently. And just, he's Johnny on the spot. If he's on the field, he's going to make a play. So just an absolutely outstanding job by Les Snead and company to go and find those guys when you didn't have a lot of capital, Furthermore, the draft class. You have a 5th rounder in Puka Nacua, who is the best rookie receiver in the league and is turning into a top 20 receiver in football right now and could be better as time goes on. You have Puka Nacua in the 5th round, right? You got Ethan Evans, who's been a missile of a punter for you. He's been huge. The kicker, that's going to be an issue. That's going to be an issue. It is an issue. It is something to be talked about, but give him credit. Ethan Evans, give him credit. Kobe Turner has done an outstanding job as of late. He just seems to get better and better and better. Byron Young, Steve Avila, a lot of these guys, and obviously there are guys that I'm missing here, but a lot of these guys that they drafted in this draft have just been so key and critical for this team to be in a position that they're at. Keep in mind, this team was 3-6. A lot of people were saying this team needs to tank at the bye. And sure enough, now here they are, 6-6. They flipped the script. They've beaten a tough Browns team. They beat a tough Seahawks team. They beat a tough Cardinals team. That Cardinals team is 3-10. That's one of the toughest 3-10 teams you'll see. And the Steelers got a load of that this week. So keep that in mind. It's been really important here that the Rams are it's all hands on deck. You're finding different ways to win. John Johnson was a late signing. He goes out and he makes the biggest play of the game, huge interception on Joe Flacco, and immediately the game goes from 20-19 to 36-19 in a blink of an eye. And that's how important this team has been. Jordan Fuller having his best game of his career last week with 4 pass breakups. Akello Witherspoon has been huge, as I said. Darion Kendrick has made some really quality plays lately. They're just getting so much production out of these guys that people just kind of wrote off as just some cast-offs. Okay, this is just a bunch of mercenaries. They're not even going to be on the team next year. That's not the case. And I think a lot of that, you have to give credit to Les Snead. You have to give credit to Sean McVay. The position coaches, you have to give credit. Adding an Aubrey Pleasant in the offseason. Of course, Eric Yarber and what he does with the wide receivers. I just think, and Ron Gould, the running back coach, the new running back coach, I thought he's done, an outstanding job getting these guys prepared, whether it was Darrell Henderson or Royce Freeman or, Kyron Williams or Ronnie Rivers or Zach Evans. I think he's done an outstanding job. Nick Caley with the tight ends. Just all across the board. Now you have Hunter Long back. He's blocking well. So there's a lot of good things to like about the Rams. They're surging at the right time, which makes them the team that can play spoiler. And you look at the Eagles, we'll start with the Eagles. How can the Rams take down the Eagles? How can they play spoiler against the Eagles? Rams have already seen the Eagles, right? They've already seen them. It was at SoFi, and this would be, in Philly, but the Rams saw them and they lost 24-13. And they've learned a lot since then. And they've gotten better since then. Yes, they had Kyron Williams in that game, but still, they've gotten a lot better. And I think another thing that you have to keep in mind is they've made adjustments. This isn't just something where they gelled and it just worked. No, the Rams had to make adjustments at the bye. It's what they did, and we can see it. Remember how many times, if you've been listening to me for a while, how many times I said the issue with the Rams is that they don't really have any checkdowns. They don't have any short options, and it's all long developing passing plays for Matthew Stafford. Well, since then, since the bye, Stafford has 8 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Stafford is checking things down. Stafford is taking what the defense gives him. If they take away the deep play over the middle that he wants to throw, fine. I'm going to take the sideline throw because I know I can make any throw in the book. And that's what we're starting to see. We're starting to see more usage in the screen game. We're starting to see more runs, creative runs, toss to the left, toss to the right, in between the right guard, right tackle, left guard, left tackle, up the middle, things like that. A lot of diversity in the run game. And we're starting to just see a more creative play calling set from Sean McVay, better, if you will. And so I think that's a big thing here when you have to keep in mind when the Rams are going up against the Eagles. Some people would say the Rams already lost the Eagles 23-14. They lost by 9. Why should I think that this team can beat the Eagles? Well, the thing about the Eagles is that, first off, the Rams have gotten better against the running quarterback. They absolutely stifled Kyler Murray. Geno Smith didn't do much in either of those opportunities. Really, Jalen Hurts did a lot. And then, of course, you look at the Colts game, Anthony Richardson did a lot. So what's the deal moving forward? I mean, I think obviously you can expect Jalen Hurts, but I'll say this. The running backs aren't playing as well as they were earlier in the season for the Eagles. I don't even think the Eagles look as good as they did when they played the Rams. Now, does that mean I don't think the Eagles are a good team? No, they're 10-2. They're a great team. They figure out ways to win. They want to literally hemorrhage the clock the entire game. They want to take over time of possession. They want the Rams fans to have to watch their defense the whole game as they struggle to stop, play after play. But here's the thing. The Rams have made adjustments, and they too are going to also put together these long developing drives. And they too have made adjustments where they can now pressure quarterbacks. They're getting more pressure. May not be perfect, but they're getting more pressure. And I think the Rams could beat the Eagles. I do. If the Rams played the Eagles again, they're a completely different team. I think the Rams could beat the Eagles. Now the Niners are tough. 4 straight wins, tied for the best in the league right now. But I think the Rams could beat the Niners. Reason I say that, the Rams lost 30-23 after they lost their right guard, Joe Noteboom, who's not as good as Kevin Dotson right now. They lost their right guard in the middle of that game, right? After that, things went sour. And the Rams lost by a touchdown to the 49ers. Now, I understand playing, at Levi's would be tough. But I think this team is different. We saw Kyren Williams is starting to emerge. I think earlier in the year, guys, when Kyren Williams became the starter, he's literally growing on the fly. He's developing on the fly. He's a much better runner in week 13 than he was in week 2. So I think that also helps. That was his first start as a NFL running back. Now we know he's a lot better than he was week 2. So I think that would help. Another thing, the quick passing game. Again, if the Rams want to keep using this quick passing game, it's going to benefit them against pass rushes like the 49ers, like the Eagles. If you want to use the screen game with Kyren Williams, great. If you want to use the bubble screen game, great. If you want to just throw short of the sticks, just keep hitting them over the head with the short passing attack, and then know you have Matthew Stafford who can hit the deep ball, great. I think the Rams can beat them both. Then you have the Lions. This is the best matchup for the Rams by far. Jared Goff would absolutely struggle against the Rams. Why? Sean McVay knows everything about him. This is not a new Jared Goff. Jared Goff has not changed much since the 2017-2018 Rams. His tendencies are still there. He still holds on to the ball too long. He doesn't feel the pressure. You could still punish Jared Goff. Another thing here, the Lions secondary gives up everything. I think Matthew Stafford would be a nightmare for this Lions team. And they were great against the run earlier in the year, and now they're not so much. So if you can run against this team, and Kyren Williams is proven he can run against anybody, then you're going to have some success. I think the Rams' best fit probably would be against the Lions of the top 3. The Dallas Cowboys, again, let's be honest, that game is completely different if they call that pass interference play on Cooper Kupp in the red area on the first drive of the game. On the defense's first drive of the game, if they don't give, that free penalty to extend a drive after they stopped them on 4th down. Mind you, the Rams came out and sacked Dak 3 times on that drive, the first drive of the game. Now, Dallas, I think, is really good. But I do think that snowballed because of a few uncertain things. First off, Stafford injured himself in that game, and Brett Rippon played almost the entire 3rd quarter and the entire 4th quarter. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that some of those calls had some serious implications and flipped the game on its head. And you can say, well, let's not blame the refs, but that changes the game flow. That changes how that you call plays. That changes a lot of things. So that really did change the game. Now, at the same time, you have to overcome that. And at that point, let's be honest here. The Rams weren't good enough to overcome those mistakes. They are now, though, and we've seen it. They could have fallen right on their face the moment Cleveland scored that touchdown to make it 20-19. They did not. They only responded in the best way possible by scoring 16 unanswered to end the game. Now, I'm not saying they win 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 or even 8 out of 10 against the Cowboys. But the idea that one game the Rams couldn't go in there and win, we saw what Seattle did. Seattle's not better than the Rams. The Rams beat them twice. So also Cowboys in the postseason, Mike McCarthy in the postseason. I would definitely trust the Rams to beat any of those teams. And then you have the Falcons. Now, I don't think the Rams have a shot to play the Falcons at all, because the Falcons are currently 6-6. They have the 4 seed because of the fact that the alignment of the playoffs is just wrong. That should be reseeded, or you shouldn't have an auto bid if you're going to be a 6-6 team. But anyway, the Rams, if they're not going to play the Falcons, the only way they'd play the Falcons is if they advanced. I think it'd have to be to the NFC title game. So I think the Rams would have no issue with the Falcons. I think they would beat the Falcons. I think they'd put pressure on Desmond Ridder. It would be over. The Vikings, I think the Rams would have some issues with, Brian Flores blitzing and whatnot, but I think the Rams can beat them. And I think it really comes down to the Rams and Packers. I think they're the most dangerous teams in the NFC right now, outside of the obvious 49ers, who are on a 4-game win streak and just blew out the Eagles. The reason I feel that way is because they're both peaking at the right time. And this is kind of a barometer to kind of show you, okay, so right now these two teams, although I think the Packers have a 4-game winning streak, might have a 3. The Rams have a 3. Okay. Seattle is starting to fall. They've lost 3 straight. They've gone from 6-3 and a really good shot of making the playoffs to 6-6 and a bad shot. They don't have the tiebreaker against the Rams. That is going to kill them, because essentially by not having the tiebreaker against the Rams are always a game ahead. Seattle has to look at the Rams as if they're 7-5 right now. That's how it is. But same with the Rams and Packers. If you look at the Packers record and the Vikings, for instance, the Rams have to look at the Vikings and Packers as if they're both 7-5, because that's what they might as well be with the tiebreakers. But it goes back to what I was saying. What team here, aside from really the 49ers, do you really feel the Rams have no shot of beating? And I mean, they've already shown you they could beat the Niners. They were in that game. They outplayed them the first half. This Rams team has the experience, the playoff experience. They have Matthew Stafford, who won a Super Bowl. They have Cooper Kupp. They have, Sean McVay. I mean, so much experience just in that building, just in the faculty room. And now you're talking about getting these guys an opportunity, these young players who just don't. I remember, I think it was Andrew Siciliano when he came on my show. And he said, this team is better than, I think it was him. And I remember hearing this team, they're the team that doesn't know that they're supposed to not be good, and they're just going to go out there and be good anyway. And it feels that way. It feels like the Rams truly have a shot in every game over the last 3 games. But also keep in mind, it's not just the last 3 games, because throughout the year, it's been development. It's been growth. When you have a young team, even those bumps in the road, like we saw with the Packers, even those bumps in the road, the Packers have the youngest team in the league. They have been able to build upon that, and eventually they got things rolling. And right now they're on pace. I mean, they could win out. I mean, they have a pretty easy schedule upcoming. With the Rams, it's not really any different. 3rd youngest team in the league. They got some really key players at key positions. But aside from that, I mean, don't let them get hot. They can absolutely beat the Eagles. They could beat the 49ers. They could beat the Lions. They could beat the Cowboys. They could beat any team. I think the point is, the Rams we saw against the Cardinals, the Rams we saw the way they finished out that game against the Browns, that's a top 5 defense in football. They can beat anybody. Anybody. In the playoffs, it's not a 7-round, You know, it's not 7-game series. It's 1 game. So I think that's a big thing here. And it's what makes him so dangerous. So I'd say the Rams and Packers right now are the teams that you do not want to play come playoff time in the NFC. But I'm curious what you guys think. Definitely hit up that poll that's posted. It looks like so far I got wild card win. How dangerous are the Rams in the NFC? So the most votes go to the wild card win, which I think I had them going to the divisional round before the season started. I had them at 10-7. I had them losing to the Lions in the divisional round, or the divisional round. So we'll see what ends up happening. Just don't let them get hot. If this Rams team beats the Ravens this weekend, this is a completely different conversation. Because if this Rams team beats the Ravens, who, by the way, I think the Ravens win the Super Bowl. That's what I have. I have Ravens over Eagles in the Super Bowl. If the Rams beat the Ravens, that is going to be crazy. Because think about it. If they beat the Ravens, they're now 7-6. They have 4 games left. And 3 of those 4 games are against losing teams. The Saints 5-7, the Commanders 4-9, and the Giants 4-8. And then you have the 49ers at 9-3 at the end of the season. So just think about that. It's not a guarantee. No game is. I think the Ravens are going to win, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams pulled it off. If the Rams beat the Ravens, we're having a completely different discussion next week. So that's what I got for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. Again, you can follow me at JK Bogan on the Bleacher Report app. You can also follow me at JK Bogan on all social media, whether that's TikTok or Twitter or whatever. Also on YouTube, Jake Ellenbogen, type it in. You'll find me there. But that's going to do it. Special thanks, as always, to Bleacher Report for having me. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Later, folks.